It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hey friends, this is Andy. This episode of Accelerate is brought to you by Kitedesk. Kitedesk is the all-in-one sales development platform that lets you manage all of your sales development activities, such as email, direct dial phone calls, and your daily to-dos, all in one place to open up conversations, book more qualified meetings, and really create a predictable pipeline.
Kitedesk Flow and Kitedesk Find allows us to find exactly the right people in the industries we're looking for, in the roles that we're looking for.
That's Kitedesk customer Michael Orphis. Michael is head of sales at Stratified. In addition to the all-in-one management of his sales development team's days, Kitedesk helps him with another big part of his job.
We have the ability with Kitedesk to do what we call targeted campaigns. Our conversion rate from what we were doing in the past to what we're doing now has been really massive.
So you don't have to take tons of time to research, prospect, then blast large lists of people that never turn into sales opportunities.
We're seeing higher clicks, we're seeing higher open rates, and without question, we've seen a massive increase in pipeline generation.
So, to learn more about Kitedesk, schedule a free demo, and learn how to create predictable pipeline at your sales organization, go to kitedesk.com/accelerate. That's KITEDESK.com/accelerate. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. I am excited to talk with my guest today. Joining me is Timo Rein. He's the co-founder of Pipedrive, which is one of the leading CRM systems for the SMB, the small mid-sized marketplace. Timo, welcome to Accelerate.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Andy. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. So take a minute, maybe introduce yourself. We'll fill out that very sketchy introduction I gave. Maybe tell us how you got your start in business.
Yeah, absolutely. We built a sales software, which is called Pipedrive, to help people around the world to manage complex sales processes. And we started that business about 6 years from now, or 6 years ago, in 2010, after having done for about a decade or 12 years of sales consultancy and training business, being one of the three partners there. And before that time, I was, just pretty much a student doing professional recruitment work as a side. And even before that time, I was really a kid in Soviet Union. Right about the time it sort of collapsed as well. And yeah, that's pretty much me going backwards.
So yeah, as you mentioned, you just sort of threw out there, you grew up as a part of the Soviet Union and in Estonia, which is now an independent country.
True.
What was that like? I mean, how did things change when the Iron Curtain came down?
I think, to be really honest, I think most of the changes affected my parents more, or the next generation more than me, because when I was about 15, 16 years old, that's when it happened, and that's, I think, the age when you are a teenager, you're kind of, getting away from home and you're learning the life anyway, right? So you don't really recognize what the system is because it's all new to you. And but my parents, I think they went through a very difficult time, which is they had lived, worked about 20 odd years. And then suddenly everything as a system point of reference changed. And I think even worse for their parents, or my grandparents, who had worked for a whole long time, and then realized that, oh my God, now for example, the pensions and the retirement period for them became really, really miserable, just because there wasn't any continuity there, and then the country was, starting anew. But other than this, it's been great being a part of not only building a company, but also being part of a country being built. I don't know how much I've contributed, but I'd seen that from the beginning, when the country regained independence in '91 and to what's it become right now.
Well, I mean, you employ a fair number of people in Estonia, so you are obviously making a contribution.
Yes, that way, yes.
So what was the impetus to start Pipedrive? I mean, what was the drive? What was the hole in the market you were trying to fill, or the pain point you were trying to solve?
I've sometimes looked back. I don't think we were very wise. We were just, sometimes we refer to the other co-founder from sales side as two stupid salespeople. I don't know why, but we kind of like to think that way when we are in a group of technology people, because then it kind of makes sense more. So we just, we try to be really good in sales. And by the fact, I did get into sales not thinking that I should be a salesperson. I didn't really think that that's my thing, but I somehow got sucked into these jobs and then later on realized that, well, that's what it is now. So having done sales for about 10 or 12 years in a sales consultants and training business, we had tried, different tools for sales management ourselves, because obviously, as you know, when you want to be really professional anywhere, you will have a habit of using some cool, good tools to help you kind of not control, but to secure your success, and also get this sort of the effect of repeated success, and take off some of the load, just repeating stuff over and over. When you have a good tool, you can avoid all that. So we looked at different CRM tools at the time, early 2000, Target, Act, and then Dynamics, Salesforce. And we did actually implement Dynamics in a company which was about, I think, $50K US to do for a small company, about 15 to 20 people. That was a whole lot of money. And the problem was that we did notice quite early on that the people don't actually want to use it, even though the idea was that it's probably one of the best sales tools around at the time. It should help us. It's very functional. But the salespeople like us and other guys, you could see that they wanted to sell but not use the product. And then we ended up having, instead of implementing it and fully utilizing that money and getting a return on investment, all that good talk, we actually used Post-it notes on the walls, and we did use spreadsheets, forecasts, and these sort of things. So and then we realized that we're not the only ones. At first we thought that we are the weird people, but then we noticed that all the customers that came into our office, and we asked, what CRM you use, and they said, we have something, but people don't want to use it. And then we, they noticed that some of the sort of analog world tools that we had, and they said, well, that would be cool. That could be really useful. If we could use it, if it was a software. And then we started sort of, looking at each other like, hey, what's going on here? And I don't think we were much smarter. We just at one point noticed that we, don't use the tool that we have purchased for about $50K, it costs us a fortune, and we don't have a tool that we could find on the market. And I think that was the first time we realized that, maybe we should build it. But that was, far from us being serious, because we really didn't have that sort of experience as far as technology, guys or founders go. But that was the starting point, yeah.
That was the starting point. So when you were starting it, you were saying, look, we want to build something, and this is a question, I'm sort of speaking as a statement, but was it your vision is to build something that the salespeople would use to help them sell more, as opposed to the perspective of most CRM tools that salespeople have is it's a command and control tool for management?
Yeah, it kind of goes that way in businesses, is that money and effectiveness starts to drive all these sort of decisions. And quite often that's the way it goes in businesses, that you buy things at the exec level, you sort of try to implement that at the mid-level, and then the users would have to try to use things at the whatever level they're at. And with CRMs, you could see that. You could see that the tools were built that way. And obviously we felt that the tools we didn't find, they weren't built the way that we thought they should be built for the salesperson's benefit. And again, one other thing that we didn't think very clearly, or a sort of clear indication of that, was that we thought that that's a really good way to build a business, that would completely sort of neglect or ignore the ultimate decision maker that we knew so much about in our days of doing enterprise business and consultancy. But we thought that a product like that deserves to be out there, and all the salespeople should have a chance to use something that you feel at least that helps you along, however much, but you feel that it helps you along as you're using it, rather than you're using it and you feel somebody else gets the benefit and you just have to do it. So yeah, that was one of the mindsets that we had about it.
And Has that happened? I mean, is that the way it's turned out with the product, that usage is being driven by the sales reps?
Yeah, maybe oddly, but a little bit. But it's been great to see one thing, and I think it has to do also with the emergence of SaaS businesses as a business model, is that people at one point in enterprises and anywhere really, we have gotten so used to it, but had the chance now to try things out, like free trials and all these sort of things. And it was very difficult to do when you had a on-premise or downloadable product, but now you had a chance to try things out for about 30 days or 14 days or whatever, and then we were thinking that if people could do that in sales, they would have a chance to quickly evaluate whether this is for them and whether they could feel the help, and that has happened. So we've been able to serve customers really from all around the world since we started, and we've been trying to grow with our customers, which is not a sort of easy road. We knew that if we wanted to build a very strong product, it has to take us a number of years and a number of different functions to really blend together in a way that they would be functional from a point of view of a manager or executive, but also useful from a point of view of a salesperson. So that's quite a challenge.
Well, are you finding in the adoption of your product that, maybe I sort of get the sense that maybe in the early days that there was a lot of sort of, I'll call it guerrilla update or adoption, let's say, where, the field salespeople or the inside salespeople were buying this for their own account. And then, eventually the sales manager would wake up one day and see that, half his sales team had Pipedrive. Do you still see that pattern of adoption taking place as opposed to, somebody buying an enterprise solution?
Yeah, we do. And I think it's mainly because, our model largely is self-serve, which means that people who pick it up could be anywhere and anyone in a company. And we do have this sort of pattern, yes, that you have a large company and people from different, areas in this company, they start using it, or even in the same team. You have cases when people use it and put it on their own credit card, even sometimes happens. And then the question becomes, when the sales manager or sales exec will be aware of this or notified, and what they will do about it. So sometimes we've had cases where people then, just approach us and say, hey, it looks like our sales guys really want to use it, and let's discuss this a little bit. So the conversation starts there, and sometimes we don't see this because it's so self-serve, and they sort of make up their minds and get up and running on their own.
So there's no shortage of CRM systems for targeting the SMB marketplace. So what sets Pipedrive apart from the other ones that are out there?
And it's like you started. I mean, there's no shortage, which means that the alternatives must be from one end to another, and then probably also a number of alternatives which are very similar to each other as well. And I do think that while one answer could be the look and feel of everything that while you use the product, which I think is true in any sort of consumer type of product. That we kind of make the decision on sometimes just by how does it feel and look, because most of the products do the same functions anyway. But I think that and I'm sort of throwing a maybe in here. Maybe the ability to strike the balance between a tool being useful or functional, if you will, and then still being simple enough for you to consider this as my sort of day-to-day productivity tool instead of just becoming a sort of weekly reporting tool for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And that is difficult to do because sales, as you know yourself, it's not just one thing that you do there. You have to be a master of many different things. You have to be a master of communication. You have to be a master of scheduling, and you have to have of your time, and then you have to be a master of these sales battles in your head in a format of sales pipelines and target lists and everything. And somehow you need to sort of find a way where you have a tool where you can do all these sort of things. And I think this is where it gets tricky because you could have all the functionality and then lose the simplicity, or you could have a very simple tool which just does lack a little bit of functionality, and then you don't have it either. So maybe this intent to strike that balance, which has worked at least to some degree, so that we have a pretty good number of people as our customers. There's one proof, I think. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, which I've heard from several people in management seats in different companies, is that what we want at the end of the day is we want to do sales in a way that our focus is in the right place, most of the time. It's going to wander at times because we're human beings. And then we think like, what if that deal's come through? And then we kind of get lost a little bit from the basics. But I think the sort of thing that I've heard repeated most has been, people using Pipedrive, that has helped us change the culture in our sales organization for the better, for what we want it to be, which mm-hmm. is people focusing on what matters most. And I think what connects the people in sales is that what the sales opportunities are like, what the sales forecast is like, and we've tried to address that area more than any other.
Yeah, it seems like one of the virtues of the product is, as I look through what you're sort of doing, is the simplicity you talk about, that you're really focused on, let's say, a mission, which is to sell more, let's say, as opposed to sort of, I'll call it an engagement focus, that you got all these CRM systems integrating all the social contacts and so on and so forth into them that sort of seem to get lost. It's almost sort of like they become more top of funnel oriented as opposed to, let's see this through to completion oriented.
Yeah, and I that's my experience in sales, is that you could have had, or you could have, all the help in the world. Let's put it that way. All the information, intelligence about certain prospects and customers, and you could have people helping you, schedule your things and all these things. But at the end of the day, if you really want to get things moving in sales and move deals towards a close, it requires you to perform. So it basically is up to you whether you actually are able to take the steps and complete them with a prospect and get these agreements, and so it becomes simpler than it actually sort of feels like when you sort of enter this job. And there are certain things that you have to do really well in order to be successful, but you have to do it in a repeatedly, basically. So yeah, we probably lose, if you compare the functionality or features of Pipedrive to any other alternative tool, I think we'll lose, because of having less features. But I do think that you need to, sort of strike that balance.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a case where less can be more, for sure. So you talk about there's a proven sales methodology that drives Pipedrive, which seems to be very sort of activity-based. So what is that process, and how does it improve outcomes?
It's how you look at sales, really. Like I said before, I entered the world of sales with a clear conviction that nobody buys anything from me. So that's my starting point. And then, as I went through it, tried to learn in doing different types of sales, I got to the point where you can view it from at least two very separate angles. One is that sales is the deal, right? That you close it, and that's what sales is about. Or you could view it from a process, or from the angle of the process of how you get from A to B, or from prospect to actual customer. Mm-hmm. And I've always noticed that when I do this work, or when I witness somebody else do it, is that all the people who are able to sort of double down on the process and really try to control what they can control, which is just the steps that they take in this process, they will eventually be more successful, even if it's not like outright obvious from the get-go. As you spend more time, the difference will be there. Whereas when you have the focus on the results, it can sometimes get quite ugly. Either, the customers and prospects have these stories when they can see salespeople approaching them and, dollar signs in their eyes and everything. Or you just, you get really sidetracked by, like I mentioned before, so by certain really, really big deals and all these sort of things. And then you want to close them, and you think that the closing of a deal is like the everything. So yeah, we've tried to design the whole process of sales and Pipedrive is pretty much based on this as well, around the process rather than around the result, which is definitely out of your influence and your control in sales, as you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I agree with that 100%. I mean, I in my books, that's what I completely focus on. Control what you can control. Don't worry about the outcomes, because you'll achieve the outcomes if you decide worry about your process and the elements that you can control. So, one key thing that's really of interest to me, and especially when I talk to people like yourself that have started companies producing CRM systems and their marketing, is there's always a lot of talk around sales productivity, and you make reference to it. In your marketing materials about I think the statement is make time your friend by increasing sales productivity. So to me, that's a phrase that gets tossed around pretty casually. So what is sales productivity in your mind?
Yeah, you can look at it, I think, sort of mathematically, which is, for me, is just some sort of performance is required in order to get the results at the end of a period, whether it's a day or a week or a month or quarter. So productivity in that sense could be defined as anything or anything and everything you do that helps you perform and helps you become productive. Let's put it that way, because what you produce from a word of productivity is the results, really, without having that direct control. And when I think about then productivity tools, CRMs can be these. They may not be if they're not helping you be more productive. Something completely different could be a productivity tool. I do remember that when I did door-to-door sales once, my productivity tool was my sort of goal card, where I just listed the different types of actions that I was supposed to be doing, a certain amount of them, and I just kept track of how far along I am, as I went through my day. So, that helped me be productive. I knew how much I had to do and how much I had done, and sort of like my sort of internal GPS, if you will. When you ask this question that openly, what is sales productivity? I think that's the first thing that comes to mind. Obviously, then you can go a bit deeper and then start talking about there is sort of like hard work and smart work of piece in this productivity, and you can talk about pipeline performance metrics and everything else. But I would just keep it as is, as I said right now.
Well, I asked the question because it's a topic that I've written about, I've spoken about. I just feel like we as an industry sort of miss the boat when we talk about sales productivity, because if you look at an economic measure of productivity, it's going to be a measure of a unit of output per the investment of a unit of input,
right? And
so we measure it economically. We talk about dollars produced per hour of labor input.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I look at how the ultimate measure of productivity for sales, given that you've got a fixed amount of time that people can be available to sell, is, to me, it's a revenue dollar per hour invested of sales time, real selling time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that then you'll know, since you know what your inventory of hours is, of sales hours, you'll be able to really measure true productivity of your sales team. But it doesn't seem like there are any tools out there that really do that. I mean, I've worked in environments where we did all that measurement by hand. And so I knew as a VP of sales exactly how many dollars per hour somebody could produce. And we were selling large, complex, $1 million plus systems.
Yeah.
But in that case, I could really tell because we collected time down to the 15-minute increment of what people were working on. Mm-hmm. It seems like until we really start focusing on productivity from that perspective, all we're really talking about is performance, but not true productivity within sales. And it seems like that has to come from the CRM vendors. Probably is the best tool, perhaps, for that sort of measurement to start.
I agree. I do think that can be done at a very sort of simple level, as you put it, and it can become from a CRM vendor or a tool provider, but only I think happens if what can happen if that tool obviously gets used, and then you can make sense of what's going on. Like you said, that you measured the days. I mean, in 15-minute increments. So whatever the tool is that people use while you measure these sort of things, then you get the data, and if not, then you just don't have the data. So I think, but good sales management or CRM tool, whatever you call it, has a pretty good chance of helping people, especially in sort of more managerial executive positions, figure out what's the productivity that could be there and what is actually happening. So.
Yeah, because I think if you give an example, I do this when I speak to groups. I'll ask CEO, well, so what's the average length of your sales cycle? And they'll say, well, 60 days. I said, okay. So how many hours of sales time is that? No clue. Mm-hmm. Right? No clue whatsoever.
Yeah, because you don't dig in.
Right, and I'm like, well, okay, well, how do you measure productivity if you really don't know the answer to that question? The ultimate productivity. I mean, we can talk about performance, but and so people say, oh, gosh, we're getting our pipeline statistics report out of our CRM system, and this is our average length of our sales cycle. Let's reduce that, as opposed to saying, yeah, in that 3 months, we're only spending 5 hours a time, or maybe we're spending 100 hours a time. How do we get that down to 60 and reduce? If we do get that 60, we're going to reduce that 60 days to 30 days.
Yeah, and what you're referring to as well is the level that you actually have some sort of control over, which is your time and then your actions within that time.
Exactly. And, that's where
it
sort of triggered the thought as you're talking about, because that is, you can control that.
Yeah. And in that sense, you can, having that sort of a robust framework or tool which sort of understands that that's the only thing that you can really do and have an influence on. I mean, that's the goal for us, is to help people, obviously, get a better sense of what they have in their hands in terms of time and how many hours and what they can really do. But at the same time, like I said, I mean, building a tool for people in sales, it is not the easiest job in the world. There are a lot of different challenges that have to be tackled really well. But I completely agree on the fact that real productivity has to force us to talk about the action that you can take, and then you take, and then you can see what's the difference.
Yeah, and I think back to your original point, though, simplicity is the key, because people have to use the tool, right? That, to me, is the big barrier to adoption with CRM that everybody talks about, is that, the reason it's not being used is not just because salespeople think it's sales managers prying into what they're doing, but it's also the perceived complexity of using it.
True, and I think salespeople are probably the most brutal force, but also probably the best force to sort of signal the usefulness of such product, and whether you have a productivity tool right now in their hands, and if it's not, being used, so probably not the best productivity tool for either your business or team or at all. But yeah, if it gets used, it is probably helping people be productive. Now the question is, how much does it help you to figure out the actionable sort of action metrics within your sales efforts? Mm-hmm.
So our last question about CRM systems is what do you see the future holds for CRM systems? I mean, how do you see this tool evolving? Because there's a lot of been an explosion of sales enablement, quote unquote, sales enablement technologies. In addition to CRM, let's say outside of CRM systems, and people tend not to lump CRM into the enablement pool, but so I think we're seeing some beginnings of overlap and so on. So where do you see the future being for CRM?
Well, I think some of the things it's quite evident from now, which is just great. First of all, that the business, there used to be almost like an aura around business software that when you said business software, that meant you referred to something very clunky and something that was really difficult to use and all this stuff, and everybody sort of was just kind of, you had to do it. I mean, but nowadays I think the really good trend there is that all this type of software gets more and more consumerized, even if it's being produced by companies which have been out there for a long time. So I think that's a really good trend, and I think that continues. that you have people trying to make sure that people in sales actually get a good benefit out of it. It won't be sort of straightforward, but I believe that sort of a trend continues. Then the different barriers, which some years ago were quite evident, that you had different communication tools, and then you had different time management tools, and then you had some other sort of statistical tools or whatever. I think there's a great chance of these sort of things blending into. I'm not saying one, but more or less. From a perspective of people in sales, so that they don't really kind of feel the difference. They probably have a tool in their hand which helps them carry out the jobs and tasks that they have, and they don't really know how it's done, but somehow you can have all the necessary tasks done, and it sort of helps you along. But from a perspective of people building these tools, I think that's what happens, is that these sort of either through integrations or however things are built, but the barriers or the sort of borders between different types of tools will be less and less. In order to create, I think, a tool which helps salespeople, because I think, that is an area which I just see that this is where it's going, because otherwise there's no way to win the salespeople over.
Yeah, well, I think it presents an interesting challenge to think about relative to the industry, because, on one hand, there's this temptation to say, these tools are become more consolidated, but the more consolidated into one platform, let's say these multiple tools become, then this whole issue of simplicity starts coming to the fore again. And if you lose the simplicity, then you're going to lose the adoption, you're going to lose the usage, you're not going to get the data that should be coming off it, the benefits of using it. So I think it's not an easy question for the industry to really sort of answer, is how do you logically stitch these together in a way that still makes it usable by the salespeople?
Yeah, I do think human beings kind of want to know the future, and then I think we only smart really in retrospect, but we want to kind of see the things ahead, and so I had a chance to visit one of the professional guitar makers, and East Bay, and he had a number of different tools, all made by himself, and then he used them, and you could see that he did I think he had about like 4 or 5 distinct tools that he was always using to make sure that he can get the most quality out of the guitar that he was making. And he had honed them over the years, and it could easily be that you still have a few products or tools in your hand if you do sales. I mean, I can't imagine like everything melting into absolute one device hardware or software blend, but what has to happen one way or the other is that tools are, sort of simple enough to use, so that you don't, like I said, have this perception of complexity, and as soon as you have it, you drop it, because you know that I'm not being paid to use that. I'm being paid to actually talk to people, get them to agree on things, and make deals happen. So I'm not going to use something that I perceive to be complex. So that's the first challenge, and has to continue, that you have something simple. But then the question becomes, which you also referred to, is that how can you build things which are perceived to be as simple, but then have the necessary integration pieces there, so that different tools are brought into one for these people in sales to perform the jobs. I mean, different tools from different sort of kind of categories, like time management and communication. So that's quite interesting to me, is how these things are pushed forward. So I believe, a lot of nice creations ahead.
Yeah, it seems like it. But I love your story about the guitar maker and the tools that he used that worked, because I'm sure there are machine tools or automation, some sort of automation solution that he could probably bring to bear in his business, but this is what works for him.
Yeah, and I think that also the reason I brought this next example is it's we can think of sales that only sort of there's only a need for a human being and then some super machine which makes that human being also very super. But that's sort of like guitars are made also in factories where everything is taken care of. I'm not saying robots, but there's sort of a lot of machinery involved. But then sales, a lot of the sort of complex sales world where stakes are high, right? A lot of stakeholders, long sales cycles and high value of any single deal. It's primarily made, and I do think that all these sort of negotiations will happen forever and ever between human beings. I mean, that's where we sort of feel that we make the right sort of agreements happen. Then the question is, what do you use then? And then you're free to use anything. So that's why I said that, you had guitars could be built in a factory, which means that there might be a very good industrial tool that everybody could use and make these sort of things happen. But then you have these sort of, single units as salespeople, and they use their own tools, and they kind of like decide what's best for them, and they have, they have their craft, and what comes out is a successful result, because sales is, a lot of it is emotional that happens, and it's done with a high degree of confidence, and somebody else, might be doing exactly the right things, but without that sort of confidence, and nothing happens.
Yep.
So it's quite interesting to see.
Very much so. And now we get to the last segment of the show, Timo, where I pose some standard questions to all my guests. And first one's a hypothetical scenario that you're the star of, where you've just been hired. You, Timo, have just been hired as VP of sales at a company whose sales have stalled out. And the CEO, the board are anxious to hit the reset button, get things back on track. So what 2 things could you do your first week on the job that could have the biggest impact?
Good one. I would definitely not be the person to go in and say, "Hey guys, I know it all." He's a cookie cutter. But if this scenario involves a history of some sort, and performers also from that company, but people in this company, really in this team, I would try to first of all find out what has worked when things worked. And quite often you get that, the simplest thing you can do is you can just have interviews with people and then talk to them and try to make sense of when things were clicking, what normally was made happen, and what were the things that people actually did. And that probably helps you, helps me at least, to map out the sort of the process that people follow when things work, and certain steps they take that lead to sort of next success and eventually to overall. But I think the problem is that you don't really know which people have the best sort of, how can I put it, indication of future success, because that hasn't happened. And I think the question for me would be to realize, was it more that people stopped doing the things that have had gotten them to be successful, like overall, or was it more that some of the conditions outside of the control, competitive landscape, or just changes in the whole economy, in the lives of the potential customers, or in the product sphere, or in the marketing of the product, whatever. I mean, just trying to see what happened in the whole big scheme, and then trying to make sense that we at least are doing our best first. Like we put the the performance in that is necessary, and then measure these actions that we actually do it, because it's. I think it's very easy to sort of get carried away. Oh, we have a very difficult situation, we need to change everything. I don't think that should be the case, but let's get back to the basics would be my first thing, to sort of realize what have been the basics that have led to that success. And then trying to see if we can get, the people that were able to do it to sort of lead the way, and people who maybe were not as able, to see if they can join the forces. And if not, then obviously also you can have a case, or that you should hire some other people to join, and hopefully form a sort of a good team with some blood in it as well. But I think the beautiful thing is that you can get a lot from the people who have done the job and have done really good job as far as performers. But the trick there is, I think, not to look at the results only, but also the action that went in, because in different sales job, sometimes it can easily mislead you.
Okay, great answer. So now it's just a few rapid fire questions. You can give me one word answers or elaborate if you wish. So first one is when you, Timo, are out selling Pipedrive, what's your most powerful sales attribute?
Attribute being
strength.
I would say if it's really me, and if it's me selling Pipedrive, then the most powerful attribute would be the process that we've set up for you to find this tool on your own and get it up and running on your own, and us really never having a time to meet. That's kind of tricky answer.
That's okay. We'll go with it. So next question, who's your sales role model?
I'll just go with no particular person. I do have a number of people that are very good sort of authors and speakers, but I would go with anybody that I've seen who dares to be themselves in sales. That's quite tough to do in the world of sales, but whoever I've seen doing that, first of all, admiration, and second of all, I've quite often seen the success follows.
Interesting. The second person recently has given that answer. I like that. So what's one book you'd recommend every salesperson read?
Like, honestly?
Doesn't have to be a sales book. Could be any book.
No, yeah, I know. I have to go with the one that influenced me most during the most difficult sales type of sales that I've done, which was a booklet, which was called The Common Denominator of Success by Albert Gray. It was not supposed to be a book. It's actually a speech from more than 100 years ago. But this booklet somehow contains, in a very short format, contains so many things that I've gotten wrong in sales personally that I've been able to get right again after reading it. So somehow less is more in that sort of experience for me.
Excellent. Oh, good. I'll have to look that up. Okay, last question for you, and sounds like you'd have an answer because you're a guitar. It sounds like you're a guitar player. What music's on your playlist right now?
What music's on my playlist? Yeah, I'm sort of I can listen to the same old songs over and over. So ever since I first listened to the Beatles, I can still listen to it. So it's still on a playlist. But the very recent one, not the very, very recent one, but George Ezra one, and a number of different sort of fingerstyle type of guitarists like Thomas Lead, jazz players. So and also I added the Byrds recently because I found their story and their journey very interesting to kind of get more knowledge about.
Okay. So what type of guitar do you play?
I have an acoustic, and I also have some kind of a traveling electric that you could take and put it in a luggage. Very short version of that. But yeah, acoustic guitar, 6-string, even though I've had a 12-string, which sounds amazing, but I don't have it right now.
Do you play in a band?
I don't. I just play on my own and try to see if I can take 5 minutes of my day a week. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. But I've been in a sort of school type of band or whatever you call it. So that has happened.
All right. Very interesting. Well, Timo, thanks for joining me. Tell people how they can find out more about you and about Pipedrive.
Andy, again, thank you for inviting. It's been a pleasure. And, if you are in sales and if you do feel that you need some kind of tool to help you control your process and make sure you keep your head at what is really the most important thing for you to do next, then go into website pipedrive.com and sign up for a trial and see if it works for you. It has worked for a number of different businesses regardless of the industries. But it's also always, important for you to see if that's the case for your business model and your industry.
Okay, excellent. Well, again, thanks for being on the show. And friends, remember, make it part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And one easy way to do that is take a minute and subscribe to this podcast, Accelerate. And that way you won't miss any of my conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Timo Rein, who shared his expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining me. And until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.